Hello and welcome to the third lecture on research methods. So in psychological research, research is never perfect. It cannot be perfect. One of the reasons we publish our research is so that other scientists can evaluate it for the quality. How accurate, how well did we follow the scientific method? Were there confounds that we didn't see that others are seeing? So, in science, if you don't make mistakes, you're doing it wrong. If you don't correct those mistakes, you're doing it really wrong. And if you can't accept that you are mistaken, you're not doing science at all. And this comes to critical thinking as well. Part of critical thinking is being willing to, evaluate your thoughts for accuracy, to seek out information. And a big part of critical thinking is the willingness to accept that you make mistakes and to correct them. Now, in research, sometimes unexpected discoveries occur. And we have to be, as researchers, prepared to recognize the importance of unexpected discoveries. So a great example is Botox for migraine headaches. So once Botox came out and was being used for cosmetic purposes, patients began to report their migraines were becoming less frequent and less severe. So research about the relationship between Botox and migraines started happening. Surprisingly, it's actually very effective for chronic migraine. Insurance is only going to pay for it for those of you with 14 or more migraines a month. But the fact that insurance will pay for Botox for anything is surprising to me. It's super expensive. So I want to look at the three different types of research methodologies that we use in psychological science. The first is descriptive studies. And with descriptive studies, we're just observing and classifying behavior. Then there's correlational studies, and we use correlational studies to examine the relationship between two variables. And then there's experimental methods, and this is where you actually manipulate variables. So let's start talking about descriptive studies. With descriptive studies, we simply observe and describe naturally occurring behaviors to provide a systematic and objective analysis. There are several types of descriptive studies that we can do. One is naturalistic observation, where we're just watching people do what they do out in the world. There's participant observation, where we become one of those people and interact with everyone around us as we observe and describe their behavior. There's case studies. A case study is the study of one subject in depth. And then we have surveys, questionnaires, and interviews. And I'll talk about that more. So with naturalistic observation, you're observing subjects in their natural setting to detect behaviors as those behaviors occur naturally. Now, usually subjects don't know that they're subjects. You might think, well, isn't that kind of unethical? Shouldn't people know if they're a subject? There's no expectation of privacy when we're out in the social world. People are just doing what they're going to do. We're just observing that and describing that. So there's no subject manipulation. If there is going to be subject manipulation, then yes, we'd have to address the ethics of that. But we're just watching people. We're just out there people watching. We're just using it for research methods, for research purposes. Another advantage is that it's very easy to generalize findings to real-life situations. So data that you collect with naturalistic observation, it's very generalized, easy to generalize those findings to real-life situations. So I want you to go look at two videos. These are in the folder titled Chapter 2, Research Methods Lecture Videos. And one is titled The Bystander Effect. And the second is The Bystander Effect, People Watching a Girl Being Abducted. Welcome back. The bystander effect is fascinating, and it is extremely well researched. There is a tremendous amount of research to support the bystander effect. Now, what I liked about this, let me check my next slide first. What I found interesting about these two videos is I think it does a good job of showing you how researchers can set up scenarios out in a public area. That's not manipulating subject behavior. We're just watching what do subjects do when this happens. So in the first video, you've got the 3 different subjects pretending to be ill, laying on the concrete on the stairs, and they're looking at who gets help and who doesn't get help. How long does it take for that person to get help? In the second one, I was actually surprised that more people weren't engaging in helping behaviors because it's a little girl. During an abduction, I was surprising that the bystander effect was still so powerful when it was a child. But looking back at all the research, I should not be surprised. So those are some examples of naturalistic observation. Now, when we need to make decisions about are we going to use observational studies, we need to ask ourselves, should the study occur in the laboratory or in a natural setting? Ideally, you want a natural setting. A laboratory just being in a laboratory can skew subject behavior. No matter how much they try not to adjust their behavior, it's just an unconscious process. But sometimes you do have to bring it into the lab. How should data be collected? And should the observer be visible? So let's say you wanted to do a research study on food selections down in the cafeteria. So you're just setting up and you're just going to watch people do what they do. Now you can either sit there, pad of paper, you put a textbook on your table so it looks like you're studying. Or you can hold your pad of paper in such a way and just look at everybody very seriously. And occasionally scribble down little notes. But you just keep your head up and watch everybody. It's a little creepy. You have to decide, will the observer be visible or not? Ideally, you want to blend in with the crowd. That's not always possible. Now this brings us to participant observation, which is similar to naturalistic observation, but the researcher is involved as a participant in the situation. So we try to avoid participant observation. It can lead to some unintentional biases, and this is called observer bias. We have to be very careful to not make errors because of what we expect to see. When a subject knows that they're a subject, when they know they're being watched, we all do this. We change our behavior if we know we're being watched. You stop picking your nose in the car when you see the person next to you looking over at you like you're gross. We shape our behavior so that it's socially appropriate in any given situation. With participant observation, we have to be really careful because we've injected ourselves into the situation, but we have to make sure that we're not influencing subjects' behavior. Another issue with participant observation is the experimenter expectancy effect, and this is change in the behavior of subjects as the result of observer bias. So, again, we've got to be very careful with how we interact with subjects. Ideally, we don't. When it comes to descriptive methods, ideally we do not interact with our subjects. we might set up a scenario like the bystander effect videos, but we don't participate as a subject in our own studies. A great example of this is the Stanford Prison Experiment. So it's it's an extremely popular study, and it's also became extremely unethical, unintentionally, but one of the reasons is Philip Zimbardo, the lead researcher, set up a mock prison at Stanford. And, recruited subjects had, half of the subjects were guards or prison guards and half were prisoners. And he made himself the prison warden. Epic error in the study. That's one of the reasons things became unethical. The experimenter expectancy effect kicked in. He should have stopped the study when it started to become a little out of control, when people's behavior was getting out of control. But he didn't. Because of this experimenter expectancy effect, he became too enmeshed in his own study because he was playing a role in the study itself. So go ahead and take a look at the video titled The Stanford Prison Experiment. Welcome back. So I think you'll agree, the Stanford Prison Experiment is brilliant. Zimbardo took it too far, and he was blinded by his own bias. So with subjects, often it comes down to this. So what it comes down to is you have to find out what reaction they're looking for, and then you give them that reaction. This is what subjects do. When subjects are subjects, they come in hoping to help scientists. They want to be helpful. And you have to be very careful about how you speak to subjects and how you interact with them so that they can't figure out the reaction you're looking for. Now, this was a great study on rats, but it wasn't about the rats themselves. It was about experimenter expectancy effect. So two groups of college students, each group was given a rat. One group was said, here's your, regular everyday rat. I just want you to teach it how to run the maze as quickly as possible. The second group was told that their rat was genetically programmed to be extra good at maze running. And so, okay, your rat's exceptionally good. It's been genetically predisposed. It's genetically predisposed to be exceptionally good at running mazes. So please teach your rat how to run this maze. Well, which rat ran fastest? The second rat, who was, everyone was told that your rat is genetically superior and will be very good at running mazes. It should be fast. The rats were the same. I don't know if they were the identical animal, but they're just average research rats. No genetic differences as far as genetic code or anything like that. It was students' expectancy, experimenter expectancy effect. The second group of students expected their rat to do better, so their rat did better. It changed how they trained their rat. Versus the first group were just, okay, here's a rat, let's teach it. So the expectancy effect was quite powerful in this study. And we're talking about a rat. I think it's a brilliant study. So we have to be careful when we're using observational methods because of the reactivity, also known as the Hawthorne effect. That when subjects know they're being watched, their behavior changes. Just being a subject in a study changes your behavior. So I'm a scientist. I know that I need to go in and just be a subject. Don't try to figure out what they're looking for. Just follow directions. My behavior is still influenced because I know I'm being watched. I do the best I can, but I know I'm being watched. So go ahead and take a look at this in your textbook because it does a good job looking at the Hawthorne effect, also known as reactivity.